Hi, everybody. The date of this lecture is January 25th, 2018, and the topic is field notes. For engineering surveying, this corresponds to the second half of the material of Chapter 2, and for practical surveying, it corresponds to Chapter 14. Now, on your Moodle page, I have uploaded a document, and the document is, as you see right here, it's called the Pre-Lab Workup for Field Notes. It's on both of your web pages, so please refer to that, and I will put it up on the screen as well. But we'll start to talk about some specifics of writing field notes, and that's where that material is. All right, so there we go. So this probably looks familiar to you. To begin with, we start talking about what a field notebook looks like. There are some different examples of types of field books here, but the type that we're going to use in this class are bound. They do not have a spiral backing, and they can be hard or paperback. That doesn't matter. But this is the one that we talked about in class specifically, where the edge, there we go, the edge is bound. And the other important thing about field book is that this constitutes one page, and you'll notice that on this side you have columns, and on this side you have a graph or grid paper, so that you can keep a record of all of your information on the same page. So there are other ways to record field notes, but one of the important things about a field notebook is that it is admissible in a court of law. These documents stay valid for a very, very long time, and so you have to be responsible for keeping notes that you are going to be able to refer back to, both legally and also so that you can get back on the ground and not have to redo the things that you've already done. So we're aiming for completeness and accuracy in every type of a document that we construct. So we were talking about field notebooks and why they're so important. Now, before we get into other forms of data collection, I want to show you a document that brings this to light. Now, let's see if I can find it here. Oh, here it is. Okay, so if you look on your screen right now, what you will see is a book from the Office of Cadastral Surveying with the Bureau of Land Management in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And this is this is an old style. It's not the style that we use, but this is an old style of field notes that was actually taken. If you look right here where my arrow is pointing, the date that these notes were taken was April 25th, 1905. And the reason I bring this up, that was 112 years ago, so, or 113 years ago nearly. But this is still the controlling document for this piece of land. This piece of land is actually south of Powell on Willwood, and but the point that I want to make is these are a big deal. So every time you take notes, you need to think about the people that are going to come after you, and the fact that land subdivision and land ownership and the rights associated with land are going to be tied into the work that you do as a surveyor, and especially when you're not right there to talk about it, the work that you put into your field notebook. So in every case, please take this seriously. All right, so if we take a look then, we continue. We talk about there are other ways to take notes besides just writing things in a book. But basically, this is an example of a global positioning or GPS unit, and there's a little handheld computer here that's a data collector. Now, when you're using modern electronic equipment with good computer reduction capabilities, you don't necessarily have to write everything down, although there does have to be some sort of a written record of what you do in a day. But you can use something like this to collect a lot of data, and of course then you also have the ability to transfer that directly into a program like AutoCAD or a GIS program, without writing down everything and taking it from one form to the other. So there are other ways to collect data. We'll do a little bit with this when we work with our total station later in the semester, but for the majority of the semester, we're going to be using the field books. This is a different type of a data collector. This instrument is a total station, and as you can see, there's a little data card that fits right here. And we have two total stations in this lab. One uses an old-fashioned program. It's a 1995 data collection program. The other one just uses a little USB drive and collects all the data, so you can just take it directly from the machine, plug it into your computer or your desktop or your laptop or whatever, anything with the USB port, and work with the data directly. And so this is just a picture of a surveyor using a data collector, just showing you how much it's quite a bit easier. And like I said, you can get quite a bit more data. Of course, like with any electronic data, if you lose it, it's completely gone. So this is just sort of a flow chart showing what you can do. I love this printer, this little dot matrix printer here. But if you have a good data collector, you can take data directly from the total station or any other electronic piece of equipment to the data collector. You can go from a data collector to a PC. Once again, this looks like about circa 1995 PC. You can connect the total station directly to a computer to a calculator, everything to a telephone. If you're interested in doing that, you can actually plot out directly from your data collector or from your total station or from your computer. So it all depends on what type of networking capabilities you have. But the one thing that we always have in common is handwritten notes. So the next document that I'm going to bring over is a document, the pre-lab workup that I told you is going to be on your Moodle page. So I'm going to put it in this frame in just a second. It just takes a little bit longer. Get everything closed down. Oh, here, before I go to that, let's take a look at some different types of field notes. Now, when we're in lab and we're taking field notes, I'll tell you how to write them. Sometimes it's very important that you write the notes in a very particular format, such as in a couple of weeks, we're going to be doing what's called a level loop. When you do that, you need to write your notes in a very particular manner because the format that you write them in actually lends itself to the data reduction. Other times, it's just a matter of being accurate and being complete. So one thing, some of the elements I'd like to show you, the title of this page goes clear across the top, and you can see that the title is Measuring Distances with a Steel Tape. The written numerical data goes on the left-hand side of the page. The drawing goes on the right-hand side, and you'll see that there's a north arrow pointing at a skewed angle to the page. Because the page is rectangular, it's tall and thin. Sometimes, depending on the shape of your survey, it may not be the best thing to lay it out square or true with the page. So in that case, you always want to indicate where north is. If you don't write north, a north arrow, it's assumed that north is up. So in other words, the direction toward the top of the page would be assumed to be north if there was no north arrow. But you notice on this page that they've done a nice drawing. They've identified a building so that anybody here would be able to orient themselves on the page. They also have a note of a gravel walk and a lamppost. They have the date, where the traverse is performed. Traverse is just another word for a survey line, and we'll talk about different types of traverse later on. But the word traverse is a very general term, just meaning a survey line, some data that you ran. It says the weather. It's always kind of important because weather affects how you do a survey. It also can affect the accuracy of your equipment. If you remember last week, we talked about the steel tape. And if it's very cold or very hot, the steel tape can contract or expand. There are different effects with electronic equipment. So you want to make those notations of what the weather is in case there's any corrections that need to be made. Here we also see that we have 3 surveyors. We have Gilani, Land, and Moore. And after Gilani's name, we have two symbols. That means that he is the first symbol, the circle with the arrow through it, means that he was the rod man. And N means he was the note taker. So Gilani actually had two jobs. Land and Moore were both chainmen. All right, so if you look at that and you look down in the lower right-hand side, you'll see that Gilani signed it. And that just means that you approve the notes and that you're certifying that the notes are a true and accurate representation of the work that you did. Now, this page, we'll go back to this when we do well, it's called a differential level or a level loop. And once again, we have the numerical data. If there was a picture, we would draw it over here. But we have some information about the date, the weather, the people on our crew. The title goes clear across the top, differential levels, Grand Lakes University campus. And then down here in the lower right, the notes are signed by the note taker, and that would be Henderson. Okay. Another Borough Pit leveling at 2nd and Oak Street. You can see some of the similarities and differences. In other words, once again, we put the numeric data over here, we put pictures over here. So this particular slide has several different types of notes. And as I had said earlier, sometimes it's very important that you follow the note form pretty closely. Other times it's just depends on the survey, and you don't have to follow a particular note form closely. You just aim for clarity and completeness, accuracy and completeness. Once again, and some more types of data. The last note form here is a sewer stakeout. Sewer stakeouts are really interesting because first of all, they tend to be in construction zones, so you have to think about how you're going to keep the integrity of your surveying markers in a place that's being torn up by construction equipment or that's being walked on all the time. The other reason is because water runs downhill, and grade is very, very important when you're doing anything having to do with water or sewage. So we'll talk specifically about some of these ideas later on. And in the meantime, if I'm able to, I would really like to bring this document over. Let me see if it's going to let me do it this time. No. Hang on. Here's a document I was trying to get into the window, and you can see this is the document that is also available to you on your Moodle page. So if you'd like a copy of this, or if you need to refer back to it, you can go to your Moodle page and find it. But these are some notes that I've taken from the textbooks, and also just from working with other pieces of information and other surveying jobs to explain what we're aiming at with surveying notes and how to take them effectively in a more general way. So basically, as I had said earlier, this is going to be the lecture for 125, which is Thursday for both classes. And it's a general idea of how to think about taking surveying notes or field notes. So this is a little blurb that I took from the engineering surveying textbook, and it talks about what are the 5 characteristics of good field notes. And you can see that we aim for accuracy, integrity, legibility, arrangement, and clarity. So you want to make sure that the information is correct, complete, legible, that the note form, the way that you write it, lends itself to quickly understanding what it is you did, and also making sure that in some cases the arrangement of the data will actually facilitate the calculations that you'll do later. And if that's the case, you want to make sure that they're in a particular format. So some notes on arrangement. Like we had shown on the examples, the project name, location, date, and time are generally speaking placed in the upper right-hand corner of the page, and the weather and general conditions are at the same page. Now, the party is the people who are doing the survey with you, names and initials, the jobs, and we've described that symbol, the circle with the line through it, which is called fee. I mean that person is a rod man. N is the note keeper. Party chief is often the taker, but not always. So if somebody's a party chief, you would want to say PC after their name, and anyone who's just on the anyone who's running the chain or just running the instrument could be an instrument person, which is shown by an instrument symbol or by the letter C. The next one is really interesting, the instrument type and number. If you are in a big engineering or surveying firm, you may have 5, 6, 10, 12 levels, for example, that you want to use. And you will choose the level based on what's available to you on that day. Well, it's possible well, I don't know if I would say likely, but you can't expect the equipment to work precisely. There may be some errors of adjustment in your equipment. So if you note the instrument that you use by number or however it's cataloged in your firm, then if there's a problem with the data, you'll know that you can trace it back to that instrument. Or you may actually identify a problem based on a survey, and then you want to be able to report which instrument it is so that it can be repaired or removed from service. All right, and then of course, when you're happy with your notes, you sign it in the bottom right-hand corner, and then that's it for that particular survey. Now there's some general comments about note-taking, and the expression "when in doubt, write it out" is sort of a mantra or a catchphrase for surveyors. You're not going, in this class specifically, you're not going to use more than one engineering surveying book or one field notebook. And so what that means is you do not have to worry about wasting paper. It's more important that every survey that you do is well documented in your field book. So if you make a mistake, cross it out with a single line. You do not want to have it appear that you're trying to hide anything or pull anything over on another person. You want to make sure that your data is that the accuracy of your data is unquestionable. So if somebody looks at an error, they can say, oh, I see what happened here. So here's an example from this field notebook. You notice the data. It's hard for me to orient this with respect to there you go. Do you see how there's an error and how it's crossed out? That is the proper form for striking out an error. If you have made an error that encompasses the entire page and you've decided that the entire page is a waste, what you do is this: you put an X through the right-hand side of the page and an X through the left-hand side of the page, and then you just restart the data and your note-taking on the next page. Right? You also write what you read. That means put down the readings from the equipment. You don't reduce data in your head. So if you pull a chain and it's 5.3 feet, and you know that the last time you pulled the chain in a straight line is 2.7 feet, do not think to yourself, oh, 5.7 plus 2.3, that's 8.0 feet, and write 8.0 feet. You write 5.7 feet, 2.3 feet, add them up, 8.0 feet. So you always write what you read on the equipment, whether it's a manual piece of equipment or an electronic piece of equipment. In order to, once again, show the integrity of your notes, you should either use a pen or a very, very hard pencil. And very hard means something that is so hard that it writes so lightly that you actually have to leave an impression on the page after you've written it. This is once again to eliminate the possibility of striking something that you didn't want somebody to see. So you want to make a clear record that you wrote something. You never ever erase in a field book. You always use that strikeout idea, either for a line or for the entire page with an X. But so you want to use a pen or a very hard pencil. Never erase, never scribble. Anything that needs to be struck out, just strike out using a single line. And as we showed on the one note form, you want to use an arrow to indicate the direction of north. And if you don't use an arrow, it's assumed that north is toward the top of the page. Right, so that will give you the information that you need to write good, concise, clear, honest field notes that will stand the test of time. For ES 2070, the engineering surveying class, I would like you to read your textbook, pages 30 to 42, which is the remainder of chapter 2 in your textbook, and to do problems 2.17 through 2.32. Now, for the last information that we had about units and significant figures, you did 2.1 through 2.16. So basically what we're doing is just finishing the homework in the chapter. I have on this page, write the answers out in your field book. This is due next Thursday at 3 p.m. I've just recognized that as being an error. The due date is on your Moodle page, and it's much later than next Thursday. Also, please don't write it out in your field notebook. Write it on regular engineering grid paper like we are doing the rest of the homework. If you're in ES 2670, this will be homework number 2 for you because we did not do units and significant figures. So this will be homework number 2, and like I said, this is in chapter 14 of practical surveying for technicians. So read pages 241 through 262 and do the review questions 1 through 6 on page 263. So that's it for January 25th. Please let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you in class probably next Tuesday. Talk to you then.